Now, what has industry been telling you about the threat to jobs and investment in our country based on this move?
That I have not heard about directly.
But have you heard about it indirectly?
Well, I think probably in the same reports and the same media coverage that you have.
Are you aware that these companies are taking the government to court over this move?
I am not, but perhaps I can ask my deputy minister if he has any thoughts on the issue.
The Liberals' stupid virtue signaling never seems to end, and no amount of being mugged by reality seems to help these people, even after the entire world learned the absolute necessity of plastics during what the Liberals keep telling me is a global pandemic. The Liberals have still banned plastics, and the Natural Resources Minister in a committee meeting had no clue what was going on with the ban or the companies which are now suing the federal government to stop the ban. Single-use plastics were just officially labeled as one of the most dangerous substances in Canada. Now, it's crazy, but we all knew this was coming, right? The Liberals promised it. Remember that great moment in Canadian oratory history when our well-spoken deep thinker of a prime minister made the announcement that the Liberal government intended to outlaw safe, inert, single-use plastics? Remember this?
We have recently switched to drinking water bottles out of when we have water bottles out of a plastic, away from plastic towards paper, like drink box water bottles sort of things.
Now, before I go on, let me be clear. I'm anti-littering. However, most days I think recycling is pointless and unnecessarily expensive, especially for the taxpayer. But I think plastics are great because we can use them once for their intended purpose. And then when we're done with them, we can burn them efficiently for energy afterward because plastics are a stored inert petrochemical. In fact, you know what? This happens all the time in clean and green BC of all places. Do you remember when the Liberals were embarrassed into repatriating all that garbage that the government had dumped on the Philippines as recycling? It was brought back to Canada and a facility in Burnaby burned it, turned it into energy for homes in the Lower Mainland, and all the anti-pipeline protesters there were utterly oblivious as they charged their iPhones with garbage energy that night. But it's not only single-use plastics that were just labeled as dangerous by the government, even though those are what the government promised would be outlawed, as dumb as that plan was in a time when clean, hygienic, affordable, reliable single-use plastics stewarded the entire world through a global pandemic. Plastic utensils for all that Uber Eats, plastic medical supplies, disposable bags in the grocery store when the cashiers were told that they shouldn't touch those gross reusable ones you keep bringing, just to name a few plastic pandemic solutions. No, the Liberals have listed all plastics as Schedule 1 toxins, along with the likes of lead, asbestos, mercury, and benzene. Look at this. The last one on the list of the worst toxins in all the land, according to the Canadian Liberal government, 163, added May 12th, 2021. Plastic manufactured items. So, quite literally, all plastics. So the industry is rightfully suing. Take a look at this press release. Industry leaders from all across Canada launch Responsible Plastic Use Coalition, pursue legal action against federal government. The Responsible Plastics Use Coalition, they're going to sue the government into the dirt. And just for context, this isn't just a bunch of teeny-weeny upstart plastics companies. This is Dow Chemical. This is Imperial Oil. This is Nova. These are, by and large, enormous global companies that represent hundreds of thousands of jobs and billions of dollars. Take a look at this press release, though. Plastic is not toxic. Declaring plastic manufactured items toxic is a significant overreach by the federal government and will have unnecessary and unintended consequences, including increasing cost and confusion for consumers and small businesses, reducing investment and innovation along the plastics value chain due to uncertainty and changing regulations, creating regulatory uncertainty around which additional items could eventually be banned, resulting in negative environmental outcomes by promoting alternatives to plastics, which have greater environmental footprints, making it more difficult to create a circular economy for plastic, a system aimed at eliminating waste and the continual use of resources, and preventing new and innovative recycling pathways for plastic. It is simply wrong to list all plastic manufactured items as toxic. The federal government's approach does not recognize that most plastic manufactured items are considered to be safe and comply with national and international standards, and in the case of plastics used for food packaging, are required to comply with federal government regulations ensuring that they are safe for use. Now, friends, this is huge, but what does the government think about all of this? Well, I guess nothing. I don't think they're thinking about it at all, because it would appear the minister, at least one of the ministers tasked with justifying this senseless plan to destroy the plastics industry, because I think they're doing it because it's an extension of the oil and gas industry. You know, the oil and gas industry, the Liberals promised to phase out. Well, that guy's especially clueless. Actually, he's one of the more clueless ones in a sea of Liberal ineptitude. I know. To stand out in that is really something else. Seamus O'Regan is the Minister of Natural Resources, and his only qualifications on this file were reading somebody else's words on a teleprompter on morning television for a while and being Justin Trudeau's groomsman. Anyway, look at this in Blacklock's reporter. Natural Resources Minister Seamus O'Regan says it is, quote, really important to note how important plastics are, end quote, but admitted to the Commons Natural Resources Committee he was unaware the industry filed a lawsuit against his own government for listing plastic manufactured items as toxic. The lawsuit was filed 2 weeks ago. Now, this sounded interesting to me, so I dug up the full exchange from the Natural Resources Committee from this past Friday between Minister O'Regan and Alberta Conservative MP Dane Lloyd, where O'Regan admits he has no clue about job losses and lawsuits. And he says it's an issue instead for Environment and Climate Change Canada. Take a look.
Minister, the designation of plastic as a toxic substance threatens a significant amount of jobs and investment in our country. Can you tell me, Minister, what have you been hearing? Have you been hearing concerns from your provincial counterparts on this move?
Thank you, Mr. Lloyd. I mean, first of all, to state the obvious, I mean, it's an ECCC issue, but yeah, I mean, I've heard and read the same concerns. But I think at the same time, I think it's really important to note how important plastics are, particularly in this pandemic world that we live in.
Now, what has industry been telling you about the threat to jobs and investment in our country based on this move?
That I have not heard about directly.
But have you heard about it indirectly?
Well, I think probably in the same reports and the same media coverage that you have.
Are you aware that these companies are taking the government to court over this move?
I am not, but perhaps I can ask my deputy minister if he has any thoughts on the issue.
Well, before we go to that, Minister, what are you doing to advocate for the plastics industry in Canada?
Well, I mean, it's not within my bailiwick, but I mean, certainly,
But you sit around the cabinet table when these decisions are made. I'm not asking you to divulge what you're saying in cabinet, but How are you, in high terms, how are you advocating for this industry?
Advocating for the industry by making sure that we have a low emitting and competitive oil and gas industry.
Well, what does that have to do with the plastics industry in terms of emissions?
Well, I think it has, that's oil. Plastics are derived from oil.
Yes, and they're sequestered into the plastic product. I mean, plastics is not a huge emitting
Point of order,
industry.
Mr. Speaker. Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Lefebvre.
Or Mr. Chair, sorry. We're talking about plastics here. This is old.
I hope this doesn't take up my time, Mr. Chair.
No, that's fine. You can have your time. I don't mind at all. This is completely ECCC. The minister has his hands full with all of the sectors that he's dealing with on his own.
Did you notice that things were getting so bad for O'Regan that Liberal MP Paul Lefebvre had to intervene to save him from himself? But who will save us Canadians from covering the costs of the expensive lawsuits now being leveled against the government because the government tried to destroy an entire industry just to show off to the world about how clean and green they are? For Rebel News, I'm Sheila Gunn Reid. YouTube is coming to kick us off the platform. It's only a matter of time. They have suspended us once for nearly a week. And I think the next time that they suspend us, it will be forever. But we do have a plan B, well, really a plan B through plan Z. Now, we'd love to tell you where we've gone when YouTube finally gets rid of us. Just go to rebelnews.com. There's a little pop-up there. Give us your email address or your phone number so that we can alert you when YouTube finally deplatforms us altogether.